Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Gilbert is a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and those of the mother have went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her, they've been feeling worse.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Chad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Hello, everyone. Let me know if the audio is good while we get started. It's so good to see everybody in chat. Good morning, Delana, Rebecca Hooper, Jen Lou's here, Pointer Lover. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I see you in chat. We're just going to get right into everything that we need to discuss. As you guys know, the trial is still proceeding. And last week, we were supposed to get a testimony from Melanie P., formerly known as Melanie B., who is Lori's niece, and, you know, very much part of this inner circle of Lori's and very much part of, you know, the story. She did not testify. We don't know why exactly or if she will come back and testify, but it will be interesting to see, you know, her side of things since, you know, she was very adamant that Lori had nothing to do with anything that was sinister. Of course, those statements that she had made were years ago. I think in 2020, I will be sharing some clips from Melanie at the end of the stream, just when we go through some of the clips from the case, not including the trial. So first, we're going to start off with the trial info, stuff that we found out this week that is just brand new, stuff we didn't know before. And then we're just going to go into some recapping of some other stuff and just discuss the case. So I will play my pre-recorded. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to play my pre-recorded edited stuff. I can pause it and elaborate more. I have notes here so we can discuss it together. And then I might play a court TV clip that came out a day ago, which just talked about the trial last week and gave more information about the witnesses and the victims in the case. And, you know, just the theory that the victims were obstacles for Chad and Lori. And it seems more and more evident that that is exactly what took place. It seems very much so. It's, you know, about the sex, money, and power that the prosecution has been shoving down our throats. It's becoming more and more clear, even in my mind, that Lori had problems before she ever even met Chad. Very questionable death of her former husband, who is the father of Tylee and Kobe, and it's just, I'm thinking more and more that she very well could have had something to do with his death, even though they haven't been able to, you know, pinpoint, you know, if she was behind that. But let's get into it, guys. Thanks for being here.
Welcome to ATS News.
For anyone who has been following this case and trial, you know that it's very hard to compartmentalize the fantasy world that Chad and Lori were living in, as well as the reality of their actions and the deaths that were surrounding them at the time. I've included a clip of this doctor who spoke on Court TV. He's a mental health professional, and he was also previously in a cult many, many years ago, and he is a cult expert and written many books on it. So I felt it was important to kind of get a sense of reality in this case, and in the midst of all this chaos, it's a voice of reason and to kind of explain why and how things like this happen.
I would need to have far more information that I've gotten in the public media to make a determination, but I can look back at other cases and situations and say that people, if they get indoctrinated to believe the person is speaking to God and heaven and start saying you have a special mission. I think Lori was quoted as saying she was a spiritual warrior, and she starts believing that, then it can become a situation where she's influencing him, he's influencing her.
Now, when we're talking about influence each other, it seems as though from my research that Lori had felt the world was going to end for a very long time. She had these beliefs, which were, of course, taught to her in her LDS church growing up. And, a lot of Christian-based churches also believe in the coming of Christ again, also known as the rapture. So all these she was indoctrinated pretty much with that belief from birth. We also find out that her father is in the belief that his family and people surrounding him, in his, just in his family, a cousin came out saying that he believed that they were, the 5% that was, superior to the rest of the 95%. So Lori having this belief of, she's superior and all that, like plays into how it kind of formed into her thinking she's a goddess, and her level of rational thinking and just mental health, I think, was just deteriorating for a long time, even before Chad. We also found out that she pursued Chad. So she goes to this conference he's speaking at, he gives this speech, and for some reason it resonated with her in a way that, she had to have him. The friend that she was with at the time says, she put the moves on Chad very aggressively. So just thinking about all that, it's interesting to see. And for me, I can see, especially with the mysterious and suspicious death of her former husband, and the fact that she had Alex taser that guy as well. Apparently his heart condition was never the same after that, after he got tasered by Alex. So it's just, she's been using Alex for a very long time to kind of fight her battles, even before she met Chad. And it's always against, the men that she's with for whatever reason. She's a man eater and very questionable. She's the Black Widow in my mind.
And then the cult followers are caught up in whatever the leaders say. And what winds up happening when you're in this black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil, we're the light, they're satanic frame, turning over your power to someone else, terrible things happen. And I will comment that I've written my first book in 1988. I talk about the cult leaders want power, money, and sex, typically in that order, always power first, money second, and often sex. But it's very hard for the average citizen to look at a case and not think they're crazy or they're just cynical criminals who are pretending. But I do want to comment, there are tens of millions of Americans right now that believe in demonic possession and exorcism. And so the idea of saying, hey, there's a devil in somebody and we have to cast them out is actually part of current history right now in the religious world, in the United States especially. And it's very dangerous because people stop thinking about laws and rights and wrongs, and they're made to doubt their own critical thinking. They're made to doubt their conscience, and there's no reality testing. So people can be led into terrible, terrible things that they regret.
Comment. So just extending a little bit more on his expert opinion there about cults, and he was in a cult before he wrote a book about it and all that, it's very true that especially nowadays, I feel like there really is a big movement and just belief that, times nowadays are worse than they ever have been. There's so much darkness. There's so much evil. People have lost their way. They don't go to church anymore. The family values are gone, blah, 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 blah. Not saying that that's not true, but I am saying that I believe that Lori clung on to all that in a way that was unhealthy. I think that the fear of the end of the world and the coming of Christ again was something that she just carried around with her for a long time. Like her friend said that she would say things like, oh, the end of times is coming and I just want to protect or save my family. And, I don't want to go through that with them. And I just want to drive off a cliff with them. Those are very red flags, like not normal type of fears. Instead of putting her faith that everything would be okay and just having faith and carrying on with her family, she was very much in this extreme mentality, I feel. And Chad was just somebody who spoke her language. And that's how I've been perceiving things as things carry on. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's just like that guy said, it's not out of the norm for somebody to say like, oh, so-and-so, needs a devil or a demon taken out of them, like he's possessed. Like that is something that like people could kind of get on board with. And I think that for a while I've been confused as how these people in this inner circle, like Zulema and Melanie Gibb, how did they all just blindly believe everything that Lori and Chad were saying? They have come out and said like, well, we weren't really believing much of it, and it's like, right. But at the time it seemed like you were on board. So it just seems like, the fear was a way for them to manipulate the group and to kind of get them to believe the things that they were saying, because they did mix their extremist beliefs with some of the regular things that other faith-based people might have thought, like demon possession and all that. The thing is, like, it turned into something that it just obviously was not. Charles was not Ned Snyder, etc.
Down below if you find it ironic that the piece of evidence that's really linking Lori to the crime scene was her own strand of hair. We all know that Lori cares very deeply about her appearances, and it's very clear that her hair is a main piece of her own identity and beauty, and the fact that she believes that she's a goddess. Her hair is just a symbol of femininity. And it's just completely ironic and, very fitting that that's what's putting her at the crime scene. And then that could really sway the jury in convicting her for the murders themselves. Now, just talking a little bit more about the hair, there is going to be a lot of people who are going to say, when I do somebody's laundry, sometimes my hair gets stuck on their clothes, or, when I hug somebody, sometimes, it transfers the hair. And when we live together or we share a car, or etc., that can happen. But the placement of the hair is just very interesting. It's not on one of the first pieces of duct tape that were used on JJ's arms or face. Those were where we found Alex's palm prints, etc. This piece of this piece of duct tape that had the hair on it was on the exterior, outside of the first layers of duct tape. I hate even describing it this way, but it was on the outside of the bag that was over his head. So it's going to be hard for them to wiggle their way around it. And thank you everyone who's joined us. And thank you, Pointer Lover, for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. And Larry, JJ's grandfather, was so happy to see that not only do they have a bunch of circumstantial evidence in this case, but that is a piece of physical evidence that will be hard for the defense to kind of argue and get around.
That was a great day.
I also received several items of evidence, which was a hair attached to a piece of adhesive. A portion of this submitted hair item was taken forward and put into a test tube. It went through a series of washes to get rid of any extraneous DNA that may have been on the hair. We were trying to focus on the hair itself. Then additional reagents and chemicals were added to the sample, and it went through a series of heating and cooling steps to to isolate any DNA that may have been present. We determined how much DNA was present in that sample, then made lots and lots of copies, put that on a genetic analyzer, and analyzed the data that was obtained using a computer software program.
What results were obtained from your analysis?
So from the Bodie item E01, which was the hair sample, a partial female profile was obtained.
And were you able to make any conclusions based on those results?
Yes, the partial DNA profile matched the DNA profile that was provided for Lorivallow Daybell.
Alice Gilbert was a former friend of Chad, as well as a friend of Tammy.
And she was also a neighbor of theirs. She actually, just to kind of extend who Alice Gilbert is, she testified last week. You know, like I said, she's the neighbor. She's the friend of them. The day that Tammy died, she brought over McDonald's for, you know, the kids to have breakfast. And that was when they noticed, you know, Chad really wasn't as distraught as they thought he would be. And good morning, everyone. Please hit like if you haven't done so. I see Corey and Ashley Oakes, everyone joining. Thanks for being here.
And here's what she had to say when she testified. It really does speak to how quickly Chad moved on from people around him, and obviously had been moving on mentally months and months before Tammy died.
I asked them, where are the kids, Chad, and doesn't Tylee want a life, a job, a car, a boyfriend? And he said she didn't like people and she didn't like me.
And what struck you about those statements?
Because he said didn't.
He used the past tense?
He used the past tense. We asked him how he was doing, and he said, actually, I'm doing really good. And that he'd met the woman he was going to marry, and
you recall this being around October 26th? And Tammy had just passed away or been declared dead on the 19th?
Yes.
Did you find, did it surprise you that he seemed to be doing so well?
Yes, we were shocked. And he went on to say how beautiful she was, and we asked him where he'd met her, and he said at a conference in St. George in October. And we asked him her name, and first he wasn't going to tell us, and then he said, well, I'll tell you. And he said Lorivallow, and I had no idea who. Well, thinking, who's Lorivallow? And then he mentioned that she did a podcast with Melanie Gibb. And so then that, that's who that is.
And
isn't that funny, though, seeing them in this picture here, both of them wearing like an orangish color?
And you had some name recognition?
Yeah.
Melanie doesn't look too bad in orange, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes, just know that she had done a podcast with Melanie Gibb. They came to the house in the afternoon, and it was cold, and so I asked her if she was used to Idaho weather, and she said she'd bought some warmer clothes, and they came in and sat on the couch, was quite affectionate with each other.
And when you say quite affectionate, could you describe a little bit about what you were observing?
It was abnormal for us to see Chad that way. So, his arm was around her. He had his arm over her legs, and she was giggling and laughing. And for Todd and I, for my husband and I, we were embarrassed just because we hadn't seen Chad in a thing that way. Especially, they look like teenagers.
When you were at the funeral, do you recall making any observations of Chad?
Isn't this just a creepy picture of Chad?
Chad?
He was standing by the casket. I told him that Tammy looked good. And he just said, yeah, she does. You know, it wasn't really mournful to me, but I didn't know how he was reacting to things.
And do you recall if Chad also spoke at the funeral?
He did. He spoke last.
And did you make any observations regarding his talk?
He gave a good talk too. Maybe more like a church talk than a spouse would speak about their mother spouse.
I find that very noteworthy that, you know, even though they're her observations, these are just her opinion. She'd known Chad for a while. Like she said, it's hard to tell like how he was processing things at the funeral because like everyone else, we just don't know how someone's going to handle, you know, grief and a funeral setting. But knowing what we know based on text messages and just everything else in the case that we know about, like the dates that they met, etc., it seems very much that Chad had plenty of time to kind of detach himself emotionally and all that from Tammy months and months before she even passed. So that's why I feel like that woman's testimony was key this last week, and it's hopefully going to resonate with the jury as well. And good morning, Florida Bass Fishing. It's good to see you.
And when Chad told you that Lori had a daughter that had died recently, or that she'd recently lost a daughter, Lori didn't say anything different?
No.
She didn't contradict that information?
Mm-mm. I had the impression that she had no other children, that she was like an empty nester. And I thought that the daughter that had died was like an older daughter, you know, maybe of cancer or illness or something.
And did Chad or Lori provide you any details as to how Lori's daughter had died?
No, and I didn't pursue that.
And yeah, just pulling up Ashley's comment, it's very similar to all the comments that I've been seeing in this case, as well as the ones like talking about JJ and the kids. Like, why didn't you just give JJ to Kate or Kay and Larry? You know, they would have been happy to take him, and Colby would have been happy to take him. Why did she do this? And the same thing here, Ashley, it is awful. You know, get a divorce, Chad. Like, why didn't you divorce Tammy? It comes down exactly to what prosecution is trying to lay out: money, sex, and power. Like, if they gave Kay back to, or if they gave JJ back to Kay and Larry, you know, she wouldn't have been able to collect that money off of JJ. If they divorced Chad and Tammy, he wouldn't have been able to collect the life insurance money, you know? So it just really comes down to them being totally sane, totally capable of planning this stuff in a premeditated way, conscious of every decision that they made up until every single one of these people's deaths, including Charles, of course. There's no way I think that anyone can kind of convince me, like, yes, she is mentally ill, but she knew what she was doing every step of the way, in my opinion. And they want the money. It really has nothing to do, in my mind, like, yes, the children were in the way for Lori to have her life with Chad. But at the same time, you know, once she didn't get Charles's life insurance money, she needed Tylee's Social Security check and JJ's. And, you know, Tylee, unfortunately, being as smart and aware as she was, and in the police interviews for Charles's death that day, she just knew too much, in my opinion. And yeah, I agree, Pointer Lover. She's very calculating. And hello, Roxanne. Good morning. Glad you made it, especially on your day off. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the money.
Question with her.
Here's a small portion of Lori's podcast.
I didn't want to be out there. And I didn't want to kill myself. I wanted to pray and have the Lord just take me. Like, as a sweet mercy, just take me. Done. I'm out of this game. And he showed me myself as a warrior. in the pre-existence. As a warrior, like a beast, like I fought with Satan. He hates me. I did all these things, and so he showed that to me so that I would go on. I was crying in the temple all day long in this lunchroom, bawling my eyes out. People coming up, lady, are you okay? No, I'm not okay. This is her crying all the time. But he showed me so that I too could be the warrior that he sent me here to do.
So here she's talking about, being in the temple and crying, blah, 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 and having this revelation and people asking her, are you okay? And she says, no, I'm not okay. That part there, like, even though she's joking around in her podcast, like, just like when she said in that clip for Wheel of Fortune, or when she was on TV and she's like, oh, I love being a mom, but, I'm on the verge of cracking, or whatever she says. Remember, it's very much a joke. But just like everyone knows, there's a little bit of truth behind every single joke. So she's joking here about people coming up to her while she's crying in the temple. Are you okay? No, I'm not okay. Just like when she joked on TV, I don't know, a decade or more, when she's like talking about how tense things are, and any moment she could crack or snap or whatever she says. It's just very much a jokey, but it's truthful in my mind.
And do I want to go back and say, I can't do this, it was too hard, I didn't do it? No, none of us want to go back and do that. We came here to fight this war, and what I know directly from Jesus Christ and angels from on high who have come to minister to me.
We also have the life insurance agent who Chad worked with when he was doing Tammy Daybell's life insurance claim. We've also learned that before Tammy died, she always had life insurance, but the policies were only $10,000. And then this final one, for some reason, whether they talked about it together privately, but for some reason, this final year for Tammy's life insurance sign up, she did it for $130K.
And so you said that Chad came in on October 21st, which was the Monday after Tammy had passed away. Mm-hmm. And in your experience, was it unusual for a spouse to come in that soon to process a life insurance claim?
In my experience, yes.
What conversation did you have with Mr. Daybell when you provided him with the form on October 21st, 2019?
I explained to him that we could not submit a life claim until we had the original death certificate to go with it. And he said, that's okay. I've already ordered 8 of them.
So Chad is very much, on top of this collection of this claim from Tammy, to the point where, she says, like, I need the original death certificate, blah, blah, blah. No problem. I've ordered 8. It just plays into a lot of other circumstantial evidence in this case of their behavior, their actions, the steps they were doing up until the crimes, the steps they were doing after. It's not the crime. Sometimes it's a cover-up type of thing. And I felt like, even though it was a very short testimony, this woman talking about her experience with the life insurance money for Tammy and Chad, it paints a whole picture too. Very, very much needed that money right away. And to her, his actions were just not in the norm of things. Like, you guys know, when you're at work or if you're retired, you know that day in and day out, you would see the same thing sometimes every day. It's the same thing, different day type of thing. Groundhog's Day at work. This woman, life insurance, I'm sure is the same way, especially it sounds super boring, and just, it is what it is. That's the way that most transactions take place. Well, she is coming out and she's saying to the jury, this was a little bit different than the normal transactions I have with people. And here's why, so I just hope this and everything else that has been thrown together by the prosecution has been very much laid out in a way I think that the jury is seeing more and more. This is just all red flags surrounding Lori and Chad.
In your experience, how many death certificates do most people order?
When they share that information with me, I've heard maybe 3 at the most.
And do you know when Chad returned to submit this beneficiary statement?
He returned on October 25th. I was out of town, and so my coworker told him that he would need to come back on the 30th when I was back in town, and he was there on the 30th.
And who fills out the information that's contained on that beneficiary statement form?
Chad did.
So the information regarding attending physician and such is filled out by the spouse typically?
Correct.
And drawing your attention to the notation that she died in her sleep, would that have been filled out by Chad Daybell before bringing the form back to your office?
Yes, it was.
So Chad took it upon himself in these forms before going to the office to put that she had died in her sleep. And he knows exactly how she died, you know, so it's just interesting. He's painting this narrative on paper that, you know, it just happened in her sleep. And that's pretty much what everyone kind of thought. They're like, oh, okay. And then when she was exhumed, obviously we find out much more. And the bruising on her arms signified someone was holding her down. We'll get into it because I have notes that kind of describe all that as well. So we'll still play these clips. And then, like I said, I've got some notes and we can kind of discuss things with chat and all that, and comment down below for those watching on replay.
Audrey, the former friend of Chad and Lori, testified as well and gave detail about how she was the buffer in between Chad and Lori during the beginning stages of their affair. When Lori and Audrey started their friendship, they had a text thread that was read out loud in court as well. Here's the first text between Lori and Audrey.
Hi, Audrey. This is Lori. I would love to talk to you sometime. Text me or call me. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about what we both know. Line 2584. Oh, hi, Lori. Guess you talked to Chad. Ha ha. Line 2580. Did he tell you I have a crazy work schedule? I might be able to talk tonight. I'll have to play it by ear, but it wouldn't until ABT 9:30 p.m. or after. The same for tomorrow. Line 2578, Lorivallow to Audrey Baratario. He did. That's okay. Just let me know when you are available. No pressure. I just think it's fun to talk to someone who knows what's really going on.
And, you know, Lori here telling her, I just think it's fun to talk to somebody who really knows what's going on. It's like she, in these text messages, when things are kind of just starting to begin with their affair and their secrecy and etc., you know, she's thinking that this is fun to her, that to be sneaking behind the scenes, behind everyone's back. And this Audrey girl was supposed to be like a liaison in between them, and you know, befriended her, and they would talk weekly, you know, on the phone, spiritual stuff, as well as, you know, just life stuff in general. And you can just tell that slowly Lori started dropping these like extreme beliefs that she had, like the zombies, the castings, etc. And it wasn't really resonating with Audrey, but she continued the friendship until it was just to a breaking point where she's like, I need to just part ways, I think. But just hearing Lori say like, oh, I just think it's fun to talk to somebody who knows what's going on. It's just sick. It's like, this is all just entertaining. And Lori, for whatever reason, is bored in her own life or sick of being the mom. And it's just, I hate hearing these text messages from Lori, you know, just knowing that Charles was out there working and taking care of JJ at times when Lori walked out on them. And it's just infuriating that she's having this secret life and telling, oh, this is fun, you know, like having this little circle of friends that she created, and just more and more thinking that they could get away with stuff.
Line 2576. Reply from Audrey Baratario to Lorivallow. So what times usually work for you? I usually talk to him on my lunch breaks in Mondays or Tuesdays. Sunday afternoons I can talk.
What, if any, significance did it have to you?
The significance that it had to me is the reference to what Lorivallow and Audrey Baratario both knew.
Why is that significant?
It's significant because Chad Daybell had disclosed to Audrey Baratario his plans to marry Lorivallow.
And did it also indicate anything about an establishment of a friendship or a relationship between Audrey and Lori?
Yes, Chad had told Audrey Baratario that his wife, Tammy Daybell, was going to die and that he and Lori were to be married, but he wanted Audrey to act as a buffer between he and Lori during the ensuing time period until Tammy Daybell died.
Originally, she was Chad's friend, and 3 months after he met Lori, he asked her to befriend Lori and said that Lori needed a friend at the time, and she thought, fine. So then she met up with Lori eventually and met Lori's niece as well as Zulema and started to become aware of these castings that they were performing on Charles, and she began to feel uncomfortable, especially when they started mentioning that Tammy Daybell was also a dark spirit and needed casting out as well. During some interaction, she even asked Lori if there was more to things that she needed to be aware of, and Lori assured her no, there was nothing else going on. Eventually, Audrey ends up ending the friendship between them, which was when Lori pretty much threatened her. We can listen in her own words what happened next.
She said, "You think the world is all unicorns and rainbows? You go around helping people and serving them. Well, I've got news for you. Not everyone's a good person. And not everyone can afford to be so nice and kind." And then she said that
So I want to just focus on what threats she made to you.
she threatened to kill me.
Okay. Did she say how?
Yes. She said that she would cut me up. And something about that she wasn't in the mental place to do that, but that she would get herself in that place to be able to do it. But that she didn't want to have to because it'd be so messy and there'd be so much blood. And then bleach and something about trash bags.
So, as we know, Tylee was dismembered. So when she mentions here, Audrey on the stand, like she threatened to cut me up, obviously we're thinking the same connection, and I'm sure the jury is too. The plastic bags are significant because, of course, we know how JJ was found and what was over his head, etc. And I think even during the search warrant, plastic bags was mentioned in that as well. But, it's everyone's connecting the dots listening to this, and I'm sure the jury is too.
And that she would bury me worse. Where no one would ever find me.
Here's some text message between Chad and Lori.
Concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam is getting his bachelor's, and Leah and Joe are getting their associates. They are all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then, but I will still have that hoopla to deal with because a lot of my and Adam's family are coming and will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over. Please ask about that.
Text message between Chad and Lori.
Good morning, my most beautiful Lily. Thanks for joining me in the shower this morning. Wow. Getting ready to leave for my meetings. Does noon your time look like a time we could talk? I love you so immensely that the whole universe knows it, and very soon the people on this little blue globe will know it too.
I'm sorry I didn't give you guys a warning before we heard this disgusting text message from Chad, but I also have to make it clear that Lori was not physically in the shower with Chad at the time. So I know you guys know what that pretty much is insinuating. And I'd seen that a lot of media sources titled this story this past week as steamy text messages between Chad and Lori. And then one was like steamy or hot sexting or something like that. And then I was like, oh, this is what? Of course I clicked on it because I'm trying to get the updates. And I heard these and I was just like, steamy and like sexy, like what? Why would they title it that? Like those titles should have been labeled gross text messages from Chad to Lori. Like it was just like, why did they name it, like titled it like it was going to be steamy and all this stuff? And I like click on it and I'm hearing like about Chad alone in the shower, thanking her for being there in his mind and saying, wow. And then I think at one point, I don't know if it's on this, but I'll read it. Chad text, I need you so badly just to gently kiss you for hours. It would likely lead to other activities. And then Lori says, likely or luckily? And Chad, it would luckily lead to nakedness. And it's like, I just can't help but kind of like laugh. Like, why was Lori like, it blows my mind that not only could they get other people to kind of believe the things that they were saying, but this to them was like a steamy affair. Like I'm reading this stuff and I'm just like disgusted, like, ew, like, I don't know. Something was just, she's not working with a full deck of cards, clearly. That's all I'll say. But yeah, I just thought it was funny that the media was titling these things like, yeah, Jen Lou, I did the same thing. I want my money back. Yeah, I had to sit through. And thank you, Ruckus Rocks. I appreciate that. And if you guys haven't checked out Ruckus Rocks' channel, definitely check it out. There's good discussions and all that on there. But yeah, it was just too much. I'm like, these are just gross. Like, I don't know why the media was like, oh, steamy. I'm like, who's titling this stuff? And yeah, exactly, Jen Lou. Gosh, even his sexting is lame. I can't. Yeah, I know. It's just, I felt clickbaited. That's for sure.
Morning, sunshine. Sure. Call me if you get a chance. And that's from Lorivallow to Chad Daybell. From Chad Daybell to Lorivallow. I love you so much. You are my greatest desire and my best friend. Now on with the story.
Melanie, Lori's niece, was married to Brandon, and then she divorced him and got remarried to someone named Ian.
So we heard from Ian last week, who is, the husband of, let me just read my notes because I feel like this will kind of lay it out a little bit more before we get into this little segment, because I am going to play parts of Ian's testimony as well as the 2020 interview that they did in May. And of course, that was years and years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see, in my opinion, what they were thinking at the time, specifically Melanie. That's Lori's niece. Very much not believing anything negatively that's being said about Lori in 2020. So this is what my notes say about Ian. He dated Melanie, and at that time she was Melanie B. Of course, everyone knows who's been following this. Her former husband was shot at by allegedly Alex Cox and Lori. But he wasn't killed, but he testified a few weeks ago. If you want to check some of those highlights out, they're in my other stream on my playlist for this case. But so she was previously married, divorced, and then she starts dating Ian for a couple weeks. Then they got married in Vegas, and then he contacted law enforcement a week later. So they get married, and then all this stuff is kind of dumped on him because his mom kind of calls him and is like, what's going on? I'm hearing this, blah, 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 from your ex-wife. He was previously married. So he recorded as many phone calls as he could between Melanie, Lori, and Chad. The defense kept calling him a snitch. Blake says he was simply helping law enforcement. According to Ian, when Alex passed, Zulema called Melanie and told her that Alex had died. Melanie then called Lori and Chad. According to Ian, Melanie was distraught when Alex died. She was crying and felt like she had been attacked by spiritual demons. She had been told by Chad and Lori that there was going to be a spiritual attack that day. With Alex dying, that confirmed it. I have no clue how Chad and Lori knew there was going to be a spiritual attack that day. Then Alex died, Ian said. There's reality, and then there were layers of spiritual explanation that were laid over reality. So those are direct quotes from Ian, and then we'll listen to some more of his testimony here.
During the chaos of the children missing, Ian was informed by his own family, who was informed by, I believe, his ex-wife about who Lori and Chad were and the drama surrounding them.
So, I mean, I guess it all began when my mom called me. I was at work one afternoon, and my ex-wife had called my mom. What she said to my mom was, was concerning. She's saying, that Melanie's ex-husband, Brandon's making claims that she's in a cult, that Lori's in a cult, Chad's a cult leader, and, that they, tried to kill him, that they plotted and killed Charles. I said, okay, I'll go sit down with the police.
And what kinds of things were in those snippets?
There were snippets with discussions between Melanie and I, and there was a phone call with Chad, Lori, Zulema, Al, and Melanie present.
And what were those recordings about?
I was questioning, I was asking questions to Melanie. I was trying to figure out what she was hearing, what she was understanding. I was also trying to, another recording was the one with everyone present was, at that time Melanie was sick, and so she was just calling to talk to her aunt, and everybody just happened to be on the phone call, and so they started, the one thing that stands out was Lori said she folded Satan up like a taco and sent him to Antarctica. Lori said that she was able to cast Satan out by folding him up into the shape of a taco and locking him in a box in Antarctica.
Okay. And did that make any sense to you at the time?
Nope. They were talking about spiritual attacks coming soon, that things were going to get difficult for about 2 weeks, and then everything would settle and be okay. Mm-hmm. And this was, I think that was a recording I made on December 6th.
Okay. And so you don't have any specific, you have specific recollection of the December 6th recording about something that Lori said, but you don't have any specific recollection of a blessing that was given to Melanie?
No, I gave Melanie a blessing.
You gave Melanie a blessing?
When Al died, yeah.
On the 13th?
I don't know.
12th or 13th?
It was 12th or 13th, yeah. I just gave her a blessing of comfort.
Okay. And was that when Lori and Chad also were on the phone?
No, they weren't on the phone at that point.
They weren't on the phone. But you don't recall ever being involved in a blessing with Chad and Lori?
No, I don't recall.
And I do want to just kind of pause it for a minute, because even though it's just kind of been joked around about, like, oh my goodness, she said she folded him up like a taco, or Satan up like a taco, blah, blah, blah. That's hilarious. How did anyone believe? They're very much making jokes about it. And I get it. But then I started seeing a different, sinister side to that statement, and just thinking about how we know JG's arms were folded, and, her mentioning I folded Satan up like a taco. And then I know that the FBI agent, I believe, used the same words, his arms were folded, and it's just, I couldn't help but kind of make that connection as well. Whether she meant that or not, I just don't know. I just thought that was a weird kind of comment, obviously kind of funny in the same way, but it was just kind of unsettling too for me.
Do you think that there was no blessing with Chad and Lori?
No, it's very possible. I mean, blessings were flying around like flies.
What kind of blessings?
Blessings of guidance, comfort, to remove dark weapons. I mean, when I called and talked to Chad and Lori to ask their hand in marriage, Chad gave me a blessing, and he removed all dark ties from me, and he removed dark weapons from me, and he shielded me with light, and there were just, lots of different things that he was saying. So at any time there was any kind of negativity or difficulty, there was almost surely a blessing that would come at some point.
So Chad and Lori weren't giving these blessings in like a dark way. They were trying to raise you up to a higher level. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how it came across at the time. Yeah.
At the time, does it come across differently now?
I mean, given the context of it, I mean, given everything that's happened since, it feels a lot more like manipulation than it does, true intent to help.
Now, this is a new marriage for Ian, and so he took it upon himself to listen to what his family was saying and kind of record and work with law enforcement behind the scenes, recording audios between his wife and Lori.
So they gave me a recording device. I recorded some conversations with Chad and Lori.
And again, I just want to reiterate out loud for those who are listening and not looking at the screen, but this is from May 2020. So the clip that we had just heard was from his testimony last week. And he's looking back at it, and he's seeing all these blessings that were taking place and just their spiritual talks that they were having, with Chad and Lori. He's seeing it now, according to his testimony last week, as manipulation. But, it's interesting, what was he thinking at the time? He thought it was probably, just good intentioned, and these people are so nice, and, who wouldn't want to be blessed? You know what I mean? So here in 2020, I think at this point, he's starting to really process what he had done as far as, the case. And he said that the information that he gave law enforcement in those recordings, he thought weren't really much. But according to them, it was enough for them to kind of start building this case of money, sex, power. So the blessings to him might have appeared one way, but to law enforcement, who kind of already had known, like, well, we have missing children and this is suspicious, and her husband, Charles, and blah, 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 all that stuff that law enforcement know that Ian didn't know. His recordings to law enforcement was like gold to them. They're like, perfect. This is going to show, that they used their religion and cult beliefs as manipulation tactics, and it was leverage, and we're going to play and listen and blah, 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 but to Ian here, if you watch the full interview, he's very much saying, like, I just thought that it was going to clear things and that everything would go away.
Did you have reservations about recording those conversations? I mean, this is your new wife, and this is your new family, and now you're going to record them secretly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of hesitation, but at the end of the day, I saw that as the fastest way to get from point A to point B. Nobody knows where they's kids are. There's serious concern about their safety. I've just married Melanie, and I love her with all my heart, and I want to get her out of this. And I saw that as the fastest way to do it. If I could get some concrete evidence for law enforcement, for them to be able to say, this is where Tylee and JJ are, or this is what's happened to them, it's open and shut case, and we're done. We move on with our lives. But it didn't play out that way.
When Melanie found this out, there's interviews with them on the media where she said that she felt betrayed at first, but she's confident that her aunt had nothing to do with the disappearance of the children.
And this is why I wanted to hear Melanie's testimony so badly last week. And, hearing that because they were talking about how she had said that she'd already listened to some other people's testimonies, right? Or Brandon's. So everyone knows that that's a no-no if you're going to be a witness in a case. So it's just very sketchy and interesting that, she went so hard for her aunt, like in a way, like, she of course could never do this. She's like a mother to me. She says at one point. So I wanted so badly to hear from her, and we just don't know if, like, maybe the defense will call her. What's going to happen? Is she even going to come back? Like, she's definitely gone home to Arizona or wherever she lives. So I don't know what the plans are. Nobody knows. It's all up in the air, but I really wanted to hear from her.
And at that time of the interview, she didn't think that her ex-husband Brandon was even shot at by Alex. So it's very interesting that she didn't end up testifying last week, and we all want to know like where she stands right now versus that interview that she did in the media years ago.
As big of a betrayal as it sounds and felt in the moment too, I have to look at the entirety of it.
And so this is part of the interview, and she's talking about, she felt betrayed at first. And like, it's interesting to hear that Ian's ex-wife was the one that kind of tipped things off to Ian, so she calls her ex-in-laws and is like, these people, because think about it from like the ex-wife point of view. Yes, they're divorced or whatever, but to see that he had moved on and married somebody that he only knew in a week, like, I think a lot of people would be like raising red flags, even if you were completely over your ex at that point. Like, what? Like, who is this? So imagine being Melanie, Lori's niece here, and finding out that all this information was given to your new husband from his ex-wife. Like, she probably felt so many levels of betrayal, but it's like, you guys barely know each other.
And he's recording my conversations, and there's nothing with that. And there's nothing between Chad and Lori that was said that was, this was early in December. Basically, we're trying to clear this up because this whole case is based on this document and this outline of, bits and pieces taken from everywhere. I didn't think they were in danger and didn't have those fears and doubts until this welfare check. And then Chad and Lori left. I didn't have contact with them, and I'm absolutely worried. I knew the threats that Lori had been getting, and I don't know what's going on. And so as, being in a new marriage, I'm kind of dumping on him. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this. Meanwhile, we have all these false accusations and questions about this supposed shooting that Brandon Boudreaux is claiming that happened. And I've yet to see evidence and facts that.
And isn't it interesting? 3 years ago, this interview, I'm assuming, is before the body cam footage came out, or not body cam footage, the surveillance CCTV footage came out of Alex Cox and what appears to be Lori. I think everyone agreed. We looked at that footage in another stream too, if you guys haven't seen it. But it's, to me, clear as day that they are loading stuff up and in the Jeep that used to belong to Charles, who was then dead at that time. And that's the vehicle that Brandon says like he was shot at by, a Jeep Wrangler, etc. And here Melanie is just totally turning a blind eye to everything that's probably true. She just won't believe it. Or does she know more? And she's just covering. Like, they're living in their own reality. Like, that was something else that Ian said in his testimony that I kind of read out in my notes. It's like there's reality, and then there was reality with layers of like spiritual stuff layered on top of it. So right and wrong, like laws, were not really in the realm of these people's minds at the time. They're working on their own like law and code of ethics at this point. And it seems like it's being led by whatever Chad and Lori wanted them to believe and do. Yeah, it says right here, I have no clue how Chad and Lori knew there was going to be a spiritual attack that day, talking about the day that Alex died. Ian said, there's reality, and then there were layers of spiritual explanation that were laid over reality. So at this point in this interview, if you watch the full one, Melanie, there have more of it here too, but Melanie is very much in this, like, in my opinion, brainwashed mode of, no, there's good versus evil, and we were being attacked on so many levels. At one point, she even says the same thing that Lori's mother and sister said in their first media interview years ago, that Lori was getting threats from multiple people, blah, blah, blah. So much like Colby Ryan, her son, everyone around Lori has been manipulated and brainwashed.
So we know that Summer, her sister, and her mother have come out and said, okay, yeah, no, we don't condone anything she did. We don't know why she did it. She's given us no explanation. She's ruined our family. They've come forward and said, like, no, this is wrong. Like, we don't support our sister and our daughter. But Melanie, where is she at? Because she's probably the one that went the hardest for her, even though we've seen Summer and her mom go really, defended her a lot in their media interview before more truth came out. So, where is Melanie?
Come forward with that, but he's adamant about that it was Alex Cox that shot at him, and there's been no evidence that I've seen. And for a time I worried, could my uncle have done that? He's so sure. But when it comes back to it, I know the person Alex is. I haven't seen any evidence, and Detective Pillar on Gilbert Police never even called Alex or asked him to come in for a visit.
Did you have anything to do with that shooting?
Absolutely not.
And here, do you notice that she kind of blames the police in a way that they didn't even ask Alex to come in for an interview? And at this point, Alex is passed. So it's just interesting that she feels confident enough to kind of bash law enforcement's steps at that investigation. They didn't even have Alex come in for an interview. Like somebody said in chat, yeah, right here, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She says Lori was like a mother to her. I think we can kind of finish the rest of that thought there.
Brandon knows that.
It just seems like it's like bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. And the one thing that's in common here is that Lori is involved. How can she not be involved in something bad here?
I can't attest to all those different events, but I do know that Charles was there with an agenda, and he was working with Brandon and with Kay, and things didn't go the way he thought. And the big question we're not asking is, why is nobody asking why Charles had a $2 million policy on Lori? Charles and Brandon did life insurance together, and there's a lot of things that haven't been brought to light. That things that aren't being portrayed in the media. They're being hidden so we can run with this cult story and zombies, and it's more exciting than the truth. So.
And here it's like she's trying to raise, again, this is an old interview, just to reiterate. She's trying to bring attention to the fact that, well, no one's asking why Charles had a life insurance of $2 million on Lori, blah, blah. It's like, well, Charles also knew that his wife was unwell, that, friends had said that she wanted to drive a car off a cliff. Yes, you can actually make life insurance where it covers unaliving situations. You guys know the real term. I just don't want YouTube to get all mad if I say that S word. So it's very much like, you don't understand it, honey. Your aunt is not well. She says extreme statements. So to me, it's not weird at all that Charles felt the need to have like some sort of like life insurance on her. Am I wrong? What do you guys think? It's just her rational thinking. Like, if you watch this whole interview, there's something behind her eyes that she just seems so brainwashed.
Sadly.
Do you think you're going to see Tylee and JJ again?
I do. I absolutely do. I know Lori wouldn't ever do anything to hurt her kids. I've seen the pain that she's gone through and the abuse and betrayal. I've seen authorities let her down. I've seen court systems let her down. I don't have the answers as to why she does the things she does and why she hasn't spoken as to where they are. But I can't judge her because I don't know what she's going through. I can only love and support her and hope for everyone to be safe.
With everything that we've learned, and, I just say it was just seeing that interview, it was something I had seen years ago. I've seen it before, and it just still stuns me, especially with everything that we're kind of learning about in the trial. Like, yes, I always thought Lori was involved, but, the piece of hair on the duct tape and everything that has just come out in these text messages and just clear premeditation and movements that they'd been making to kind of run and hide from their crimes and cover them up and plan them, and everything, like think about the calls to the funeral homes and life insurance and the cult people that they got to join their circles, everybody that they were fooling and tricking, every day that gave Chad and Lori more of this complex of like, we're untouchable. It really does seem like Melanie Gibb was very much aware of things that were going on. Here's some other interesting clips. So these clips, it's just a few minutes. It's just going to be just other clips from the case that we can just review and watch again. And then I was thinking about playing a little bit of a court TV video. It's like 16 minutes if you guys want to watch that with me before we conclude, and I can read through some of my notes as well. Okay, so thanks again, guys, for being here. I'll be right back after these clips.
This was the first thing, is they were trying to cast out normal, like casting out, right? But they said, oh, no, it's still in there. Chad would deem it still in there. We can't get him out. They're breaking eternal law, right? This is what we're saying. Okay. They cast his personal spirit out and then put a new one in. So then they finally said, we got him out finally. Through our priesthood powers, we got him out. Now, who's the next one? Garrett? Garrett was the next one that came into Charles. And this was supposed to be a more advanced, darker spirit. This was Chad pretending more and more along the way, it's my opinion now. It's like he was just like, okay, that didn't work, but what can I come up with to keep Lori happy, right? And let me just figure this out and come up with, I don't know if he even played all the way through, because Lori was so pushy about being with him, and I think he was so infatuated, which you and I both know he was with her. I think he just got more creative in his darkness.
Lori had said that he was going to have a very short life, and then
if Jen Lou is listening, I just thought of something with Melanie right there, and she's like, I just think Chad got more and more creative with his darkness, and I do agree with that. Especially, he's just, you could tell there was always something off about him, in my opinion, just looking back even before he met Lori and stuff. But so he got more and more creative with his darkness, but he didn't get more and more creative with his sexting.
in a meeting that we had at Lori's house in early August
of 2019,
he Chad said that JJ was going to have a very short life. And the reason why he was going to live a short life was because he was going to come right back as Colby's child.
And to your knowledge, did Alex believe this?
Alex, yes, but Alex believed everything they told him.
Mom, I prayed for you in my worst moments. I prayed for my siblings who swore to me were okay. I thought I could trust you. I thought that you were a completely different person.
I don't have one scripture that says it's okay for children to be thrown away like garbage in the ground. And that's okay. There is nothing in the scriptures that is godly about hurting a child. Nothing. And they deserve a proper burial with family that loves them at the least. I can't support that. That's hurtful to everyone. That's the most selfish, incredibly selfish thing I can think of. I can't think of anything worse.
So just going back to some of my notes, also last week, it would have been Tammy's 53rd birthday. Let me see. So they're talking about the devices and the iClouds and all that. And pretty much it shows that the iCloud registered to Alex Cox was at the church the night Tammy died. It was showing Wi-Fi hits off the backside of the church. So he wasn't too far, pretty much. There's more information on his phone that I have that I want to just kind of pre-record and read through at another time and just lay it out with visuals too. So let me just skip through a little bit of my notes. Going back to Okay, so Audrey, the friend. Audrey says she stopped being friends with Lori the end of 2019 after praying about it. She was in Lori's house and Audrey told her she was going to go upstairs and pack her bags. Audrey says, I asked her a question, is there anything weird going on that I need to know about? And she said, what do you mean? So I said, I don't know. Is there anything going on? As soon as I turned to go upstairs, she started laughing. She said, you're so naive. You're too trusting. You're like a little child. You think the world is all unicorns and rainbows. You would go around helping people and serving them. Well, I've got news for you. Not everyone is a good person and not everyone is so kind. Then she threatened to kill me. She said she would cut me up and wasn't in the mental place to do it, but would get herself into that place. And then that's when she mentioned the trash bags and all that and bury her where no one would find her. Nothing. So pretty much the defense says, why was none of this brought up in the testimony, months ago and stuff for the grand jury proceedings? And nothing of this sort was talked about. You want the jury to believe that you just didn't make this last crap up. Audrey then says, I did not make it up, saying she never mentioned this before because she was afraid. So curious what you guys are thinking about with all that. Either way, I think even without Audrey's testimony saying that Lori threatened to chop her up and put her in places that she wouldn't be able to be found, and mentioning the plastic bags and the bleach and the blood, etc. Even if we took Audrey's statement out, in my opinion, I just think that the state has just done so well with just layering and explaining all the intricacies going on between Lori being the main connection with everything, like even if they do kind of focus on Alex Cox or Chad, they've done well with kind of narrowing it back and connecting everything back to the common denominator, which is Lori. So I don't know how you guys are feeling about her statement there, if you felt it was believable or not, but I just feel like even if we took it out, it's good enough for me. Like, the case is solid in my opinion. So this is about Tammy's cause of death, and then I'll switch to the court TV segment. So it says Blake asks if Tammy's organs appeared normal. Eric, the examiner, says for the most part, yes, but there was fluid in the lungs and a frothy, dry foam in her airways. The pink foam is a manifestation of pulmonary edema. Edema. We most commonly see this kind of setting in opioid intoxication and can be seen in drownings, heart failure, any number of things that can cause pulmonary edema. Whatever caused the pulmonary edema would be the cause of death. So he says this played in the part of him determining that it was asphyxiation. He says and shows 3 blue dots representing bruises on Tammy's upper right arm, a blue dot on the lower right arm, a mark on the chest above her left breast, and a blue dot on the left arm over the bicep. On the diagram of the back, there are bruises on the back of the right upper arm, one of the lower part of the arm, and one on the left arm. So to him, it just seemed very much that it was asphyxia. The manner was homicide, in his opinion, when they re-looked at things. Well, actually, they never even did an autopsy the first time. So that to me is just another example of Chad and Lori getting away with so much, to the fact that it just kept feeding this power that they thought they were, entitled to, or they just were loving. The fact that they were able to sweep them under the rug very quickly and not give her an autopsy is just mind-boggling. Thank you so much for the super chats, and I really appreciate it. You too, and Pizza Chemist for donating the memberships. Thank you so much. Let me switch up my screen. Lisa, that's funny. All right. So while I switch my screen, thank you guys again for being here and listening. This is going to be Court TV. They put it out, I think, over the weekend. I haven't watched it yet, so I figured I would just do a live reaction to it with you guys. But it's titled Doomsday Cult Mom Trial. Victims were obstacles for Chad and Lori. And I just love Court TV and Vinnie Politan, so I know it'll be something interesting to kind of finish things off with. It's 16 minutes. I might pause it and elaborate a little bit, but thank you guys for being here. If you haven't subscribed and liked, please do so. And let me switch my screen up for you.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us here on Closing Arguments. End of another big week out in Boise, Idaho for the Doomsday cult mom, Lori Daybell. And today, the jury getting a lot more intimate information from inside the relationship of Chad and Lori. Text messages revealed for the jury to hear, and fascinating information coming from one of the special agents who was testifying in this case as well, talking about the investigation, what they found, the pieces as they put them together. Think about what this case was like. This was a puzzle with pieces just scattered everywhere, from Arizona to Idaho to Hawaii, and someone had to put all this stuff together and figure out exactly what was going on. I mean, that's kind of what we had to do here at Court TV when we first came across this story. We didn't quite understand what was going on, but we knew there was something there. And then, you know, day after day, week after week, month after month, we were finally able to put things together to a certain extent. And now we're learning a lot more at this trial. So let's take a listen to Special Agent Doug Hart, former FBI agent here, talking about the search on the Daybell property and on Lori's iCloud.
During the course of the investigation, it became apparent that Chad Daybell acted as a quasi-religious leader, and that Alex Cox was involved in the alleged conspiracy as it related to the deaths of the children and Tammy Daybell. And this is an instance where Lorivallow is communicating to her brother, Alex Cox, regarding the things that she is learning about him. The reference to going to check with my source tonight, I believe, is a reference to Chad Daybell.
So think about this, right? So Lori is now reeling Alex into this whole thing. She's met this guy, Chad, and here's what prosecutors are laying out, right? She meets Chad. She wants to be with Chad. She's got a husband. She's got kids. He's got a wife. I mean, how are we going to be together? Well, let's bring Alex in so he can take care of everything. Bring in Alex. He'll believe anything, because Lori knows that Alex will do anything that Lori says. Why? It could be partly because Alex probably wanted to be Chad in this whole scenario. Anyway, let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. Join us live from.
And just to elaborate a little bit more on that comment that Vinny just made there, again, this is live reaction. I haven't seen this before, but he just said that a part of Alex wanted to be Chad, and that's obviously insinuating that there was some strange relationship going on between Alex and his own sister, Lori. So it's just crazy. This case is just so many levels of just gross.
Outside the courthouse in Boise, Idaho, end of another big week. But today, taking us kind of behind the curtain into these private text messages, Chanley, Lori and Chad communicating. This is significant stuff, because we can't forget, this is a conspiracy case.
Exactly. And this is an investigator, the head of the FBI investigation here, really putting all the pieces together for this jury to show each co-conspirator's part and what they played through Lori's iCloud account and planning. Let's take, for instance, Tammy Daybell. We've covered this extensively and how Chad and Lori were making some moves well before her actual death, and including planning their honeymoon before that time. Let's take a listen.
This is a text between Chad Daybell or a text from Chad Daybell to Lorivallow regarding plans for the two of them to get together.
Can you please read that?
Yes. Line 2967. Concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam is getting his bachelor's and Leah and Joe are getting their associates. They are all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then, but I will still have that hoopla to deal with because a lot of my and Adam's family are coming and will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over. Please ask about that.
So the Lord hinted that, they would not be able to, go to Hawaii and get married until that is over. Ask about that. This is in July. This is just a couple days after Charles Vallow was shot by Alex Cox, the man you just mentioned, Vinny. And we know that it wouldn't be until October 9th, there was an attempted shooting on Tammy's life. And then she was allegedly murdered October 19th. And then these two on the screen were in Hawaii getting married on November 5th.
Okay, so this goes towards trying to prove this conspiracy relative to the murder of Tammy. How about communications about Charles, Tylee, and JJ on the other side of the equation? Lori's responsibilities, Lori's family.
Well, again, these messages Doug Hart is pouring through in front of the jury. He only got up to July so far in his testimony, but before he started his PowerPoint, Vinny, told this jury that there are communications between Chad and Lori about the deaths of all of the victims covered in this trial. Tylee, JJ, Charles, Tammy, between the two. And not only that, there's a specific term that Chad would call each of these victims in the messages that they saw a recurring theme of. Let's take a listen to him explaining that to the jury earlier today.
So I just want to pause it real quick and just say that Nate Eaton from East Idaho News also reported last night on his stream that there's going to be a lot more revealed from that iCloud. So this week is supposed to be, I don't know, a lot of stuff is going to get dumped on us, and hopefully it's going to be stuff that the jury will be very confident in finding her guilty on 100%. But also, hopefully, it's real interesting text messages, unlike the ones that they shared with us last week.
Can you see the difference you're making in the world? Clean Choice Energy.
Apparent that they were very quickly after meeting involved in an illicit affair with one another, and that they shared plans to be married and have a life together.
Were there any other investigative leads or concepts that needed follow-up?
Yes, as part of the plans between Chad Daybell and Lorivallow, they had obstacles that were in the way of them achieving.
Your Honor, I want to object that this is argumentative.
Sustained.
When you say they had, understand the court's ruling, so you identified the leads that followed up. Did you find information or discussion that there were barriers to their efforts to be together?
I'm going to object this to argumentative. The question is argumentative.
Judge, it's an investigative process, and if it had significance to him, the jury is entitled to hear that, especially if it factored into his creation of a summary.
It's overruled.
Thank you, Judge.
There were several communications regarding Tylee and JJ that were relevant to their deaths.
Okay. How so?
They discussed their deaths.
Okay. And what did that have to do with the concept that they had begun an affair or planned a future together?
After the affair began, there then began to be communications regarding the deaths of Charles Vallow, Tammy Daybell, JJ Vallow, and Tylee Ryan.
Okay. Any conversations about Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Okay. And was there communication that law enforcement had to follow up on that suggested that those individuals were considered barriers to by the defendant to her future with Chad Daybell?
I object as to argumentative, Judge.
Overruled. The exact word they used in the communications was obstacles.
Okay. And just to be clear, the communications between who?
Chad Daybell and Lorivallow.
Okay. And they characterize JJ, Tylee, Tammy, Charles as obstacles.
Correct.
The jury during the FBI agent's testimony today, Vinny, looked furious. They would lean into the screens, read along the messages as he read them in front of everyone in the courtroom. There was one moment where one juror on the front row during the James and Elena text messages earlier today, he kind of bugged his eyes out a little bit and then put his head in his hands, trying to hide his expression. But coming up on Monday, again, we expect to hear from this investigator the whole day. We're going to learn more about the affair, more about the deaths and how they communicated about that, and the financial motive as well, Vinny.
So we're close to the end here for the prosecution case.
It sounds like it. Not sure if they'll call more witnesses after him, and then we may even hear from the defense next week. What will they do? We'll have to wait and see.
All right, Shanley Painter in Boise. Long week coming up next week. So rest up this weekend. Thanks so much. All right, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight from Los Angeles, Deputy Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé. Also with us from Cleveland, Ohio, criminal defense attorney Ian Friedman. And from New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor Bernarda Villalona. Great to see everyone tonight. All right, let's talk about conspiracy here. This is a conspiracy case. They're planning a life together. They have 4 obstacles, all 4 obstacles dead. Chad planning to marry Lori, but not going to a divorce attorney, talking about she's going to be dead. Are we putting the pieces together here, Philip Dubé? Does this sound to you like a conspiracy?
There are missing pieces, but yes, it's starting to sound like a conspiracy.
We're at the end of the case, Philip. We're at the end of the case.
I feel you, I hear you, but I'm not seeing it beyond a reasonable doubt. Not yet. I want to hear what the defense has to say.
I 100% want to hear what the defense has to say. I'm curious, though, at this moment, before we hear the defense, how are you guys feeling in chat? If in replay viewers, comment down below. If you were on the jury at this moment, would you be able to say guilty or not guilty? Not just for the conspiracy, but for the actual crime itself, the murders. Could you say guilty or what would you say?
Of course, on its face.
What if they say nothing? What if they say absolutely nothing?
Then she's going down like Amelia Earhart.
Okay, good.
That's what's going to happen. Oh, yeah, okay. She's got to put on something, okay? I am not convinced. Remember, Vinny, and maybe the think tank remembers this, in the pre-trial stages, Lorivallow went to a state hospital to undergo what's called competency training, meaning she was mentally incompetent during the proceedings. That means defense counsel could not rationally defend the client because she was out of it. She had to go to the hospital. So what does that presuppose? That she was also in the throes, in the pangs of psychosis, mental illness, while with Chad Daybell. And I truly believe that she was perimenopausal with late onset of schizophrenia and was embattled by dark spirits and internal stimuli and voices. One of the things that is
she's got the dark spirits and she's a zombie. She's got to go.
No,
should be a death penalty case.
Not quite so simple. It's really not, because what is missing here, truly, is why somebody in the throes of psychosis would succumb to this. And the literature will tell you that many people, late onset, late in life, have tremendous fears of abandonment because they don't want to be left behind with the voices, with the internal stimuli, the sounds of demons, and then this conflict with deities. So what happened? She fell prey to Chad Daybell, and she trusted him to carry the mantle, if you will, but of the good spirits and not the dark spirits, and kind of went along for the ride because she did not want to succumb to the demons that were within her. And if you notice now, she was successfully treated twice while in the state hospital so that they can resume criminal proceedings, and she appears to be rationally cooperating. I hope for her sake she puts on some kind of a mental defense. Otherwise, like I said, she's going down. One last point, and that is in criminal law, particularly in conspiracy and in the law of homicide, there has to be a union, not just of the criminal act, but of criminal intent, the criminal mind. And when you have a disjointment, if you will, of both, you cannot convict. Not where you have a crime that has a specific intent behind it. But we'll see what she's got.
Yeah, well, she did. I'm going to have Bernarda respond, and then Ian, you'll get the rebuttal. So Bernarda, I'm looking at this, and I'm like, she's the one recruiting Alex. I mean, I mean, Chad has no idea that Alex is a guy who will do whatever Lori wants him to do. And what Lori wants him to do, according to prosecutors, is kill some people.
Exactly. So, Philip, thanks for the background, but the jury's not going to know about all those competency exams. That was for us to know about the competency exam. That's why the prosecution in this case moved forward with her case first, because they didn't want to jeopardize that she will go back to being incompetent. Aside from that, the reality is that if we keep it simple, this woman and this man, they loved each other beyond words, beyond all these love letters, beyond all these telenovela stories, and were willing to do anything and everything so they can be together. That included killing the kids and getting rid of the wife that was in the way as well. And I think the jury, they can see that simply. It's not going to be an issue when you put all the pieces together and you make the argument to the jury. It's not going to be an issue at all. Just keep it simple. And also, again, a jury's not going to get past the fact. It's like, you're the mother of these two kids. Where were they? What were you doing with them? Why weren't you looking for them? Why were you chilling on the other side of the country with this man and telling lies about the whereabouts of your kids? And I think that alone gives so much strength and weight to the prosecution's case that it'll be easy for them to come back with a conviction in this case.
You know, Ian, that loin fire was just burning hot. It was burning hot. To me, that's what this is all about. Two married people with a lot of obligations. They call them obstacles. Commitments, they call them obstacles, were in the way.
You know, Vinny, you asked me to talk about law, but you always throw these things at me, starting with loin fire, and you want me to get into a legal.
Hey, Chad's words, not mine. Chad's words, not mine.
So let me say this, Philip, I agree with everything you said. And the four of us could have a really great legal academic discussion right now. We really could. But as I recall from the opening, now, of course, the defense doesn't have to telegraph where they're going to go. They didn't even have to give an opening. But when they did not talk about this sort of defense. Maybe they'll get there. I agree with you 100%. If they don't, she's got zero chance. I think she has very little chance now. Bernarda, I'm with you on this one. I think there's too much death here, and you have the death of two children. The jury's not going to love any sort of defense suggestion unless, as you said, Philip, they've got something as strong as you just put forward. I'm not seeing it right at this moment, but we all know as trial lawyers, we wait till the very end. As of today, she's in big trouble. We'll see what happens by next Friday's think tank.
Yeah, I would love, I want the jury to get to the truth. So I'd love to see her get up on the witness stand like every other criminal defendant and give us their side of the story. Just get up there, give us your side of the story, and we'll figure out if it's reasonable. That's all.
Yeah, I really am. As much as I was saying the other day that this trial just didn't really excite me, or I guess like I just was more wrapped up in the Alex Murdaugh trial than I had been in this one. I don't know if it's because there's no cameras or not, but now I'm really, now that the defense might give their side of the story or has to give their side of the story, it's going to be very interesting. And I'm like on the edge of my seat to see how they explain all this, because it seems like for the most part, not everyone 100%, but everyone in chat was pretty much saying that they feel confident right now that she's guilty. So it's going to be interesting to see where everything goes with the jury's perspective on everything. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate you guys being here with me this morning. If you haven't liked the stream, please do so. I pinned in chat my Facebook group, and that actually is a way that you can get notified when I go live if YouTube doesn't notify you, because I've been getting people that comment and say, I didn't get notified. So sorry I missed your live. And it's, I figured I can just kind of alert you guys through the Facebook group too. So it's just an additional way for us to kind of communicate and all that. But typically I go live Monday mornings. So we will be following this through the end, of course. I'll be taking notes all week long. I'll put something together for you guys and we can come back here and discuss it very soon. So thank you so much for being here, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. And I just can't thank you guys enough. And the moderators, thank you so much for those who have donated. I appreciate it more than you guys know. New members, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll talk very soon, okay? I'll see you guys around the YouTube streets, because I am following from CDT's channel and Sleuth Mom's channel and other channels, the Letitia Stout trial, and I want her to be found guilty. So I have been following that through chats and in my Facebook group too. So another reason to join is we talk about other cases in the Facebook realm. So anyways, guys, we'll be watching everything and taking notes. So see you guys soon.